Hey there, friends. Long time no see. I wanted to give everyone who's curious, and I know that's not everyone, and that's fine. But I wanted to give folks who are interested a little update on my book, because I'm pretty excited about it. I have to say. Um, at the beginning of this project, I thought this is really an arrogant thing to do. And then I realized that's nonsense. So the first draft is done. The second draft is in progress, and the second draft is essentially I've printed the whole thing out. I should have brought it. It's a monster. Double spaced. It's not what it's ultimately going to look like, but it's so I went through it and I did some revisions on paper, made things clearer, made things make more sense. Got myself closer to what the message I was trying to deliver initially was, and then went into the document and clarified some more. And now it's in the hands of a friend of mine who's editing it. And that is a good thing because I am not a good self-editor. And I think one of the downfalls frequently of self-published books is that they lack editors. In the sense of like both from like a proofreading and grammar thing, but more often from like an outside creative mentorship, which is what really good editors do when a book is being published, out there in the world, by a publisher. So if you are planning on self-publishing a book, I would recommend getting yourself an editor that you trust. It's not, uh, it costs, but I think it's worth it. And then I'm in the process of trying to secure the rights to a deck that I'm a big fan of to illustrate the examples. And also exploring some backup plans if that doesn't work out. I think it might, but just want to be ready. And the plan from then, once I have the edited chapters back, is to go and do the final round of revisions. Anything I add needs to be proofed and checked by my editor friend, and then to do the layout. And I'm going to use InDesign to do the layout, because there are ways in which that's easier and there are ways in which that's not. But in terms of like tracking the number of pages and all of that stuff, InDesign is gonna save time. I thought about like what should I do? Like I want to share some of it with you, but like I thought, oh, maybe I'll read a sample chapter, and then it just felt weird. So what I thought I'd give you is kind of like a verbal table of contents and sort of tell you what's in it. So it is primarily about reading with Marseille or Pip decks, but not exclusively. And the lessons that you learn in the course of the course, and it really is a course, it's like a class, the lessons that you learn over the course of that will absolutely add color and shading if you're reading Toth or Toth, or I don't know how to pronounce it. I've heard it both, or Rider-Waite Smith. So even though it's geared mostly to those few nerds out there like me who are into sort of pip decks, it's not, you're not going to be leaving anything behind if you read it and go through it. And the thing that I think is kind of exciting is that the first kind of third of the book, and it's like a big chunky third, like the big first chunk is actually not the trumps or the majors, it's the pips. And you can get a sense of kind of what the lessons are going to be like. If you go back and look at some of my pip videos from March of the Pips, one of the early activities is the thing I did, which was to kind of go through and research the numerology and distill it. So you get a lesson, and then you get a little intro, and then a handful of activities that go through it. So the pips will go through the numerology, it'll go through the elements, it'll go through what I'm calling sort of a tarot math, which sounds scary, but it's not. It's basically sort of element plus number equals meaning. But we also get into not just that, but context and questions. So element plus context plus question plus number. Yeah, element plus number plus context plus question gives you the meaning of the card. And then you sort of put that in parentheses, and for additional cards you do that again. But one of the big things about working with the pips in this book is going to be about helping multiple cards help you achieve one answer, so that you are able to kind of look at the ace of wands, the two of, swords, and the three of cups, and say that's not three different answers, that's one answer, to a question. So to use multiple cards to help you get one answer. So that's part of it. And there are a lot of activities around that. And a big bulk of the book is about the pips and sort of working with them in combination, working with the meaning in combination with the context of the other cards and the question. So big stuff there. I'm really excited about that. The next section is on the courts. And I gave you kind of a preview of that in an earlier video, with the video about, sorry, sitting on the floor and it really hurts my back. The video about the reversal with the courts and helping you figure out who's who. There's stuff like that in there. There's some stuff about, how to personalize them, how to make them more than just an idea and ground them in life. There's a big section on the major arcana and the trumps, of course, and again, how to ground them. There's a lot that's been written, I think, and I've certainly enjoyed a lot of it, on the more esoteric relationship of the tarot trumps, or the major arcana, and magical or spiritual kind of development. What this course is going to look at is, what does that look like in life? Like, which trump is your boss? And why? And what do you do with that? Or which trump tells you where your lost keys are, for example. So we're really looking at the tarot at like a really ground level. And the aim is not to discredit more esoteric or more spiritual work with the cards. My theory is that you can do all of that and this, and if it's a useful tool, it can give you all of that. So it's going to take the trumps and sort of root them in the earth. And the whole thing is really about like rooting the cards. We're going to look at the visual language and how to use the visual language of the cards to find another layer of meaning if we need it. So those are the big lessons, and there's a lot of activities I'm really proud of. I hope you're going to like them, that will take you really deep into it. So it's not the kind of thing where you're going to sit back, or you could, and just read it, but there's a lot of things in there that are going to help you kind of crawl deep into the deck and just sort of, the metaphor that I use in the introduction is that when I was in college, a friend of mine who became, we just met, but he became a lifelong friend, said to me, if you want to get good at anything, you got to get in the dirt and make a mess and cover yourself in dirt and mud and just crawl in there. That's kind of the attitude I've taken with this, is like, let's crawl into the mud with tarot and get dirty in a good way. And like, just play and experiment and make messes and do it wrong, because there is no wrong. And then, just do it, you know what I mean? So with no risk, because there's no one out there to sort of tell you you're doing it wrong. So that's kind of the aim I took with the activities. So they're really like, let's get in the sandbox together and play. In addition to that, there are about 7 chapters that aren't lessons. I call them interludes. I may change the name, but they're just kind of essays or like musings about my feelings on things like intuition, on things like being right. That's a question that someone asked me on Facebook the other day. Like, we worry a lot about being wrong. What happens when we're right? And that's scary. What if we say something that comes true? Or what if we tell someone their partner's cheating on them and we're right? Like, what if we go down that road? So there's musings on that. Did I say intuition? I may have. Intuition, even though the book is not about sort of spiritual tarot, I cover, talking about spiritual and how, even though this method is grounded and very earthy, it's just another way that this magical tool helps us, and how magical that is. So it covers that. It covers being wrong, and whether or not readings can be wrong. It talks about whether or not people, who tell us we're wrong are not ready to hear what we're telling them. And oh gosh, there's there's so much. I won't give away the whole store. The visual language. There's some books that I recommend listed in it. I should have brought it up. Anyway, so there are those essays that are called interludes now that kind of are sprinkled throughout the book between lessons so that you can get a rest from, because a lot of what we're going to do is sort of start heavy lifting. So you're going to want rests from now and then, but you don't necessarily want to put down the book. Hopefully you'll want to keep reading it. So there are some interludes that are going to just be sort of my musings on things from my experience, as someone who's been reading for a long time and has done it really badly and really well. The other thing I think is going to happen, well, I know it's going to happen, is that sorry, terrible. Once it's published, I'm going to offer discounted private coaching for people who want it, who get the book, and want feedback on some of the activities or want to work with me on some of the activities. So that'll be a thing that I offer, is sort of like coaching, so that it's a little bit more like a class, and you can come and say, hey, I did this reading based on the thing in the book. I'm not sure that I did it right. Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that there's no such thing as wrong, but I can work with you and help you sort of identify how you got there, and sort of check your math, so to speak. And it won't be about being right or wrong. It'll be about, how can I help you reach the destination that you're supposed to get to? Because that's another thing I talk about in this book, is that there's no wrong. The cards that you draw for that reading at that time with that person, with that question, in the mood you're in and the mood your client's in, all of those things are affecting the answer. The answer is in there. It's just, how confident are you that you've answered it? So we can talk about that. So I'll offer private coaching at kind of a discount. And then I think another thing, if there's interest, if enough people end up looking at it, because who knows, it's a self-published thing. I'm one guy. It's not like it can be sort of like a massively huge thing. But if there is enough interest, I was thinking that a private Facebook group for folks who've bought the book, who don't necessarily want to, get private coaching, but who want to work with each other. Because there are some things in the book that say, hey, go out there and get feedback on this from someone you read for. So people could work together collaboratively if they want to. So I'm kind of super excited about it. I've always wanted to teach. Life has not been conducive to that lately. This is kind of a way of doing that without having to sort of get up on Saturday morning and teach a class. So I hope that it's going to be interesting for folks, and I hope that it's going to be useful. And, if you like my videos, I think you'll like the book. And you might even like the book more because I'm a better writer than I am like an improviser. So when I'm making videos, usually I'm like, all these thoughts are in my head and I'm trying to get them out before I forget them. In writing, I can actually take time to make sure that what I'm saying makes sense. So I think those are the big things I wanted to share. So I'm hoping that the book is going to be ready around Thanksgiving in the United States, sort of and ready for like holiday buying time. That's that. So I just wanted to share that because I'm excited, and I really, really I'm hoping that people are gonna like dig it and just enjoy it. I will say this: writing this book changed the way I read, flat out, and that's not bragging, because I had to put myself through a lot of the activities that I wrote as examples in the book, and I have become a different reader from going through it. And I would argue that I've become a clearer and less apologetic reader. And by apologetic, I mean I don't sit there and think, what if I'm, it's more about like, here's the question you asked, here's what I see. And so my readings tend to be a little sharper, a little clearer. And I've also gone back to writing out readings a little bit more than I used to, because I found sort of that lost love. So I'll shut up. If you have any questions, let me know. Be well, and I'll let you know more as I know it. So take care.